Catalan President walked out during a speech made by the Spanish ambassador in an event in Washington D.C. Why? He thought it was offensive to himself and Catalonia. Hello and welcome to Catalan News. It was supposed to be an official trip mainly to support Catalonia's culture, but President Torra's visit to Washington is turning out to be a pretty intense one in the political field. Last night in an event he denounced Spain having political prisoners, something that prompted the Spanish ambassador in the US to call him a liar spreading propaganda. Torra's exit has turned out to be a stumbling block on the path to dialogue between both administrations, as we'll tell you in our show today. Also in the coming minutes, we'll talk to a scientist who will tell us about a new development against cancer. The Spanish president has already said no to a referendum on independence. Even before the Catalan president proposes one in his upcoming meeting with him, this is nothing different to the previous Spanish government's stance. The approach of Madrid, though, is different now, lowering the tensions. Yet one of its ambassadors was a former minister of Rajoy's executive, the one in the US, the country Torra is now visiting.
A new clash between Catalan and Spanish leaders. This time, though, the confrontation did not occur in Barcelona or Madrid, but far across the Atlantic Ocean, in the capital of the United States of America. A delegation including President Torra is in Washington D.C. for a festival focusing on Catalan culture. Last night, Torra gave a speech at the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture.
Jo havia fet un discurs en el que naturalment havia esmentat els presos polítics, els exiliats. Malauradament després ha intervingut l'ambaixador d'Espanya, el senyor Morenés, que ha fet un discurs al nostre parer intolerable i ofensiu per mi, com a president de la Generalitat, perquè m'ha titllat públicament de mentider.
The ambassador accused Torra of spreading propaganda and went on stage saying he would correct what the pro-independence leader had previously told the audience. The Catalan delegation responded by chanting support for jailed pro-independence leaders before eventually walking out with Torra. To avoid further confrontation, the festival organisers decided to cancel all speeches at the official inauguration. Torra called for the resignation of the ambassador, but the only thing his Spanish counterpart Pedro Sánchez had to say was that he did not agree with the Catalan leader.
Es que no lo he escuchado, pero en todo caso lo que sí que le puedo asegurar es que presos políticos en España no hay. Lo he dicho en muchas ocasiones, no solamente hoy. Es decir, que no hemos variado nuestra posición. Lo que hay es pues una crisis política que tenemos que resolver desde la política.
The two leaders will meet on July the 9th in a first crucial encounter to tackle the political crisis in Catalonia. Speaking from Washington, Torra laid out his demand, a binding vote on independence, something the previous Spanish government repeatedly rejected, and which prompted Torra's predecessor, Carles Puigdemont, to go ahead with a vote despite Spain's opposition. The result has been one of Spain's worst political crises in decades, but with a different party ruling in Madrid, the answer remains the same. A referendum to separate from Spain will not be authorised.
Madrid is closing the door on a vote on self-determination, but it looks ready to make possible another increasing demand coming from Catalan pro-independence parties. That is moving the leaders in pre-trial prison to jails closer to home. At the moment, they are 700 kilometres far from their families, who have to travel 12 hours every time they want to visit their relatives, usually for a 40-minute meeting with reinforced glass in between.
The Spanish government has begun the process to transfer jailed pro-independence leaders to prisons in Catalonia. There are currently 9 Catalan politicians and activists behind bars in the Madrid region. This comes a day after the indictment appeals of those involved in the pro-independence case were rejected, meaning they will all face trial. The Supreme Court judge has said the investigation into the accused is over, thus paving the way for the prisoners to be relocated closer to home. This is because he no longer needs them at hand. The news was received well by pro-independence groups, but for Junts per Catalunya, the situation remains far from resolved.
Estem contents, però el tema no és on són, el tema no és si estan en preventiva o no, el tema és que estan injustament empresonats, que porten molts mesos així, que ho veu tothom.
The main opposition party in the Catalan parliament, however, saw the decision differently.
Porque aquí el separatismo exige y el señor Sánchez ejecuta. El señor Sánchez está a las órdenes del señor Torra.
The judge's reaction came after Spain's Interior Ministry asked if further procedures against the jail leaders were necessary, but it only inquired about 4 of them: Jordi Cuixart, Jordi Sánchez, Carme Forcadell and Dolors Bassa. An announcement is yet to be made on the fate of the 5 other politicians jailed in the Extremera prison: Oriol Junqueras, Joaquim Forn, Raül Romeva, Josep Rull and Jordi Turull. In total, there are 25 pro-independence leaders being prosecuted by the Supreme Court for various charges, including rebellion and misuse of funds. Under Spanish law, rebellion can carry a sentence of up to 30 years in prison. 7 pro-independence leaders are currently seeking refuge from the Spanish justice system abroad, including the deposed President Carles Puigdemont and members of his cabinet. They have European arrest warrants hanging over their heads and fear they won't get a fair trial should they return to the country. According to the criminal justice watchdog Fair Trials, Spain is using the arrest warrants disproportionately. This, on the day Spain's National Court confirmed sending the former Catalan police leaders to trial for sedition, which means up to 15 years in jail.
Let's move on to science now. We bring you the latest breakthrough discovery by researchers at the Vall d'Hebron Institute of Oncology in Barcelona. The finding could make the difficult challenge of fighting cancer easier, especially against tumour cells that resist current treatments and can cause the disease to reappear years later. Working for one of the main oncology research centres in Europe, scientists at the VHIO started to study these cells nearly a decade ago. It might take another 5 years or more to figure out a treatment that could effectively help treat cancer in humans, but the results so far are promising. You can read the results of the study at America's Journal of Clinical Investigation. If scientific papers are not your forte, don't worry. We bring you the principal investigator of the team to tell you more about their new discovery. Hector G. Palma, welcome.
Hello.
First of all, could you tell us what was the problem that you and your team were trying to solve?
So we have been working for the last 10 years on what is known as dormant tumor cells. These cells are relevant in cancer for 2 main reasons. One is they are resistant to most of the treatments that are currently available. So you have to think that drugs are designed to kill cells that proliferate and multiply, and those that are latent or dormant just escape completely from these treatments. So this is quite a challenge for the oncologist, because these cells then hide as a residual disease and are responsible for future relapse. So months, years or even decades after apparently curation, patients relapse, and these are the cells responsible of the regrowth. So we decide to work and close and investigate the details of these cells with focusing on finding a precise Achilles heel of these cells, so a vulnerability. So we wanted to actually kill them by knowing a particular factor that could be central for their distinctive behavior.
And so what were your findings, and why are they important in the fight against dormant tumour cells?
So the issue was that actually by profiling, by investigating the molecular characteristics of these cells, we were able to identify a factor that is known as TET2, that is an epigenetic enzyme that is not only responsible of driving these cells to dormancy, making them resistant to treatments, but also doing that, orchestrating a process that made these cells retain their malignancy, the full potential to regrow the tumor. And the most striking result, that is the main focus of our publication, is that if you eliminate TET2, these dormant tumor cells die. So instead of getting dormant, they die. So that made us quite excited, because it was a potential drug target. So actually we are now, because we know about TET2 relevance in dormant tumor cells for quite a long time already, so we started 2 years ago a drug development program, so focus on inhibiting with small drugs this TET2. And this is the initial step for making possible a future drug, a future medicine to eliminate dormant tumor cells in cancer patients.
Your research was only made possible by Spain's Association Against Cancer, which means that it was funded by donations from citizens and not by public institutions. With new governments in Catalonia and Spain, what should they do to help scientific research?
So, answering your question is quite simple. You have to do a general budget on science that is getting closer to simply the European countries that we have nearby. So we are so far from these percentages of the whole national budget, even from the Generalitat or from the Spanish government. So you need to invest more in researches and more in scientific projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. Palma.
So it's been a pleasure.
Moving on to economy, one of the biggest Catalan origin multinationals is facing massive changes ahead. We're talking about Naturgy. The name might not ring a bell because it used to be called Gas Natural, a major gas and electricity supplier. The change is owing to its international ambition. Evidence of this was seen today at the presentation of the company's strategic plan in London. This includes a €7 billion payout by 2022. Its new name was made official yesterday when its stakeholder meeting took the decision. The old Gas Natural moved out of its registered office from Catalonia in the middle of last autumn's political turmoil, but its CEO said that this might not be forever. And to finish the show today, we're approaching the first anniversary of last August's terrorist attack that struck Barcelona, especially its iconic promenade, La Rambla. Today we heard a song to honour La Rambla and to pay tribute to those events. It's a choral Catalan rumba, a genre typically developed by Catalan gypsies. Bye for now.
La Rambla tiene ese poder de conquistar al que la ve, di fermare il tempo per un momento. Quan è la multirracial, on qualsevol pot ser un fragment d'un mosaico que se viste de gente. La Rambla tiene ese poder